Hi, this is Craig with the Everyday Makers. I got a weird little project for you today, and I know that most of our projects are a little weird, so that's really not saying much, but today, even a little different. Mini pallets, mini pallet coasters. Just fun little project. What makes them kind of extra weird, these are made from pallets. Recycling a pallet into a whole bunch of little pallets. All said and done, not a specifically difficult project, just kind of time consuming to get any sort of quantity. And this is my first time doing like really a batch quantity of something like this, so it's not a one-off. I'm going to do my absolute best to high speed as much of this video as I can to really help get you through it, because I think it's going to be a little while. But yeah, it's a fun little project. Start by tearing apart a pallet, then process it all down, make myself some mini pallets. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, let's get to it. Okay, after a whole ton of planing with somewhat wet wood, which I may never do again, we've got my boards down to where I want them just about. They're about a ½ thick, give or take. I just found that to be a good stopping point. I probably could have gone slightly thinner, but this seems to work for what I want. So now I've got a bunch of boards I can work with. I'm going to go ahead and chop these down. I'm currently set to about a ½ cut, and my depth just slightly over the edge of the board. The cuts down in the saw blade, I never can remember the name of them, get it up to right about there, and that's about how thick your blade should be. Just basically, you're cutting all the way through, but you're not cutting 17 inches of blade above. So yeah, so we're going to cut basically essentially ½ squares right now for a handful of these. And then I'm going to move to a thinner cut and cut probably ¼ boards. Then I'm going to plane down just a little bit more to get just a little more finish out of. Real simple project. It's just a lot of cutting, simple project. So ½ squares right now. Move my blade over, do some of the boards, thin rips. We're get the sucker knocked out. And now, more planing. I'm going to take my square boards out of square, make them kind of tall rectangles. They're currently ½ inch by ½ inch. I think we're going to end up going maybe 5/16, just a little bit bigger than ¼ inch by ½ inch. Just give them a little bit of a chunky rectangle kind of form factor. And then the flat pieces, I think I'm going to go down to probably maybe an 1/8 inch, maybe 3/16. We'll see kind of where it looks best. Okay, let's get to planing. So this next part, not hard, just repetitious. I'm going to cut everything that I just made into 4-inch chunks. So 4-inch chunks. Every board going to be the same size. The different thicknesses, same size. We're going to make this happen. Get it down to uniformness. For that, I'm going to set up a stop block. Shouldn't be a problem. We'll just zip through it. Okay, what you just saw there, assuming I did my job right, was a very, very, very time-lapse version of about 20 minutes worth of 4-inch cuts. Really, it's not hard at all. It's just repetition. It's just a lot of it back to back to back to back. But we're seriously batching out some quantity here. If you wanted to make just a couple of these, not hard to do. It's quick. But batching out a whole bunch of them, getting the most I can out of every board, takes a minute. So now, the last actual cutting part before the assembly. Not a hard part. Just more of a little bit of a creative part, requires a little bit more delicate touch, but I'll show you a way to make this real fast. Pretty simple. What we're gonna do, our board's here. We're gonna cut a little arc, 2 of them to be exact, into the board. See if I can get that in there. Yeah, just like that. 2 little arcs in the board. Gonna go about halfway through, give or take. This is quick. We're gonna strap a bunch of them together with some blue tape into a block. Work the miter saw down the block. You could also use table saw, real easy for this. If you wanted to, you could get super fancy with a dado blade, but I don't care that much. This is a simple little fun project. So, miter saw it is. We're going to set our depth stop to get just about halfway through. I'll show you, it's real repetitious, but it's quick. We're going to do that next. Okay, finally ready for assembly. I've got kind of a cool product here. This, you can barely see it. I hope I can interject a picture of it or something. It's labeled as a silicone dog dish, but it's really, really awesome for making a little vat of glue to dip a brush in. I love it. It's about, I paid $6 for it. Solid purchase. I'll try and put a link down in the description too, because it's very handy. Titebond 3. The only reason I'm using Titebond 3 on this, Titebond 2 should be plenty, but there's a good chance these will end up living outside or something, so it's just a little extra protection to keep them together, and I'm not using any fasteners at all other than glue. So any extra strength I can get out of the glue, not a bad idea, and it really, the cost and dry time, not vastly different, so that's the way I'm going to go. Okay, let's start some assembly. I'm going to assemble one and then kind of chat about it a little bit, show you exactly what I'm doing here, and then I'll start working on the rest. I'll hopefully get them all batched out here. Hopefully I've got enough tabletop to last me. So I'm pulling my little stretcher here off the tape, freeing them from their little blue prism. Okay. So here's what we're building. Take 3 of these little stretchers, and for the moment, flip them upside down. Put them pretty much in a square. I could probably actually break out a square and do this a little bit more accurately. Take 3 of these boards. One across each of the humps. That's step 1. It's pretty easy. After those get all glued together, then the whole thing will flip over. And this is after I let the glue tack up for a little bit. Just no point in messing with it if I don't have to. So they will flip over something like that. Once we get that flipped over, a whole bunch more of these boards. Just kind of pretty evenly spaced. Kind of make them fit as good as you can, as much as you think they should be. You can go more spaced out like an American style pallet. You can go really tight together like a European style pallet, but that's a pallet. Pretty snazzy, huh? That is a drink coaster. Okay, let's go ahead and put some together. Very random thought. The 90s, early 2000s. We accepted a lot of things. There was a show called Coach, for those of you that don't remember it. Coach had a character on it named Dauber Dubinsky. We accepted that that was just his name. That's weird. Okay, we are to day 3 of my silly little project here, and mind you, this is not a lot of time involved. It just, life happens and glue takes time to dry, so work with it. Okay, so as I've used my nice thing of Type Bond 3 here as a simple weight, this doesn't require gigantic clamping or anything. Like I said, this is a fun little silly project, not fine furniture. Okay, so I'm going to remove this, get it out of the way. Little clamping board there. Okay, now we have a whole bunch of partial pallets. We're getting there. Now requires part 2 of assembly. And if you thought the first parts were complex, you're not going to think much of these either. Okay, so we're going to basically just take some of our glue here. Got to peel the skin off the top of this when I came in today, and it just made me smile. I hate the term satisfying that everybody uses, but it really was today. Okay, so I just put a line across. I don't really put too much precision into it, just simple. Probably could stand to use a new brush, so this one's a little crispy. Let's swap to that before I get a whole lot further through this. Okay, so once you got some glue brushed on there, take more of your boards and just put them on. Very, very simple project. Give them a little bit of spacing, and this is something you'll kind of move them around a little bit as you go. Try and figure out what looks correct. This is very much a prime example of there is no right answer. Like, this is just a fun thing. It's not, there's not a correct way to do this per se. So you can either have them like that, where it's basically a solid block across the top, or you can go more kind of traditional American pallet style. A lot of the Euro pallets tend to be way more of a solid base to them. So for better or for worse, that's just what it is. A lot of the American pallets tend to be a little more spaced out. I think it also depends on what size you ended up with for your little boards, your little mini boards. Very curious with that also. At what point is it no longer called a board? Like, how small does it have to get before it's just a stick or something like that? Because these technically are still boards, they're just really small boards. So I'm curious about that. There's got to be a guidance somewhere. Somebody's come up with a definitive article on it. Okay, so you could do a little bit more American style. A little bit wider spacing on them. Just got your guys here on the end, one in the middle, a little bit further spacing if you choose. Something like that. That's more of like an American style palette. A little bit further spacing on it if you can kind of see that. Just kind of depends on what you want it to be. For what these are, I think more of the tight spaced Euro style is going to be better in my preference, but you do you. There is plenty of room for creative expression on these, and I have plenty of little blocks, so I should be fine. It might get tighter towards the end when I need a little bit more out of them, but for the moment I got a ton of them. Okay, pallets, making them, stacking them, doing a thing. Okay, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of these. And they stack nice because they're square. Okay, more pallet making. So this last one I'm putting together is actually the second one that I put together that I had to strip all the little boards off the top of, because I'm super smart and attached it to the bottom rails rather than the top rails. Because I'm smart. So, you know, that's why I try not to talk while I work, because I screw stuff up. So we're going to go ahead and fix it. It'll be slightly less than perfect, but once again, pallets. Little stuff like this also makes really good little conversation pieces and stuff. If you do a lot of, you know, entertaining out in the backyard and stuff like this is fun. And it can live outside, and if it gets ruined, bummer, you make some more. There's no real money into them at all. It's a cheap, fun afternoon project. So, something to do, it's fun. Okay, so I'm gonna put some weight on this little separate guy, since it's kind of screwy. Will get its own personal bottle of Tite Bond 3. And the bigger one here, bigger stacks, we'll get the big bottle. Alrighty, let that sit for quite some time. Got stuff to do today. So once it's all dry, probably tomorrow I'll get back with you and we'll talk about finishing, and then we're done. It's, like I said, this really, for as many of these as I've made, this is a quick project. I'm going to have, before editing, but I have comfortably less than 2 hours into these. And if I was more efficient about it, I could probably come up with even better ways to do it. But just for a little hacky project, it's something fun to do. Cool. Okay. It's been a few hours. When I had lunch, ran some errands. I think we're dry. Dry enough to work with. Type Bond 3 takes a little while to dry, but really this wood in this is really dry. There's hardly any glue on it. Should be good to go. Okay, so finishing. Finishing for these is pretty crazy easy. You're essentially just taking a sander of some sort, whether you want, like I've got my trusty little battery sander here. You can use a little sanding block. When I was making the first two of them, I just used a sanding block because they sand pretty quick and easy. It's just pine, it's nothing special. So yeah, so you basically are just hitting these to kind of just square everything up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect because, once again, pallets, but you're trying to take anything that might be a splinter later, anything like that. Just doing your best to make them look a little bit better and keep them from being an accident, and a fun novelty. Keep them as a fun novelty, not as a death trap, basically. So we're going to go ahead and hit it with a sander real quick and square it up, and I'll show you the very, very last bit. Okay, that's it for sanding. Like I said, real rough sand. Just kind of take anything. I like to break the corners just to make it so there's less chance of a splinter or things like that. Like I said, this is just really, really crap grade pine. So the idea of it splintering is a realistic possibility. So anything you can do to kind of mitigate that a little bit. It takes a whole 2 seconds to do and just makes for a better product. So once you got it to this point, you're pretty darn close. We're going to take a marker, something very fine tip. I am using this Artline marker that they've sent me that I'm currently testing out. Any fine tip Sharpie, anything like that will work. This is what I have on hand, and I'm giving it a test, so we're going to go ahead and do this. Okay, as cheesy as it sounds, and this does sound cheesy, I totally get that. 2 little dots on the end of each one. Just right down there, 2 little dots. Looks like nails. It's so simple. It's the easiest thing in the world. It looks like nails. It completes the whole illusion of being a pallet. People see a pallet, they kind of expect nails. So run down each of your stringers there. Just 2 little dots. And it's kind of fun actually, because as the ink hits the wood, it tends to spread out just a little bit across the grain. It gives it almost a, this has been here for a while, rusting kind of look to it. So it's actually kind of a cool look. That once again kind of completes the illusion. Takes it from I slapped together some popsicle sticks to I actually meant this to look like something. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so after you got your dots on that, really that's all that takes. Oh, grab a towel. I'm going to go with tung oil. You can not stain these if you choose. You can not do any finish on these if you choose. It's 100% up to you. I just happen to have a new container of tung oil here. I'm going to go ahead and work through that a little bit. Tung oil, I think, gives it kind of a cool, slightly darker, a little bit more amber hue to the pine, makes it look a little bit more like something. And the more it sits, the darker it gets. So it's something that, like, it looks cool. It makes it look a little bit, once again, more than popsicle sticks. And also it brings out the natural differences in the color of the pine. So as it's working down, like the color of the end grain becomes drastically different, and the actual individual slats of pine become drastically different. And it just gives you more of a legitimate, this is a palette, this is not just something I put together for the look of a palette kind of thing. So it turns out pretty cool. And you just basically put it on, get it nice and rubbed in. And it doesn't take much. A real thin coating works. You're not looking for huge protection. You're more so just looking to give it a coating for the look almost more than anything. So you just want to give it a coating, make it look half decent. Work it in the end grain. That's pretty much it. That's where I leave them. I don't do 17 coats of tung oil. I don't do anything special. Don't wax anything after, anything like that. Just real simple. Just a nice fun little project. And it's a tiny little pallet. And it holds a drink or a container of tung oil, whichever you prefer. Don't drink the tung oil. That is not something you should do. I apologize for even saying that, but you could. But anyway, so yeah, pallets, pallet coasters, fun little project. And once again, the concept of upcycling a pallet into a pallet. There we go. We took something that was going in the dumpster and made it something that we can kind of use around the house. And once again, if they get destroyed for some reason, throw them away. Put them in a burn pile. Use them for yard scraps, whatever you want to do. Doesn't cost you nothing, just a little bit of time. Okay, so here's a project. Hopefully I can get a nice little beauty shot thrown in here somewhere. Yeah, cool, fun little project. Fun little giveaway gifts, things like that. Little project you can sell if you have other stuff you're selling. Just throw these on a countertop next to it. Put $1 a piece on them. Somebody will snag them. So, cool little project. Okay, don't forget, if you liked the video, like, subscribe, reshare. There's a million pallet videos, but how many of them are a pallet making a pallet? Really, see? Something different we bring here. So yeah, hopefully you come back and watch more of our videos. We appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate you. Thanks.